The International Paralympic Committee recently celebrated its 30-year anniversary, unveiling a new brand narrative to better communicate the influence that the Paralympic movement and its amazing para-athletes can have on society and driving human rights. Change starts with sport. Paralympic leaders and para-athletes were charging forward with renewed vigor and vision toward an entirely new era. Tokyo 2020, the next stage, and fearless Paralympians, the actors. Then COVID-19 struck, a curveball, forcing all to chart a new course during uncertain times. Andrew Parsons has been the president of the International Paralympic Committee since September 2017. So what lies ahead for the Brazilian sports leader in the IPC as they cooperate with Tokyo 2020 organizers to stage the rescheduled Paralympics in 2021? And how will Parsons lead the national Paralympic committees into a new era in a time of crisis when our global health situation changes from day to day? Hello and welcome to another video edition of ATRadio. I'm Brian Pinelli. And joining us now from his home office in Brasilia, Brazil, is the IPC president, Andrew Parsons. Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Good morning, Brian. Well, I'm as good as I can be in this situation of the pandemic, but I'm fine and with a lot of energy to face the challenges that lies ahead of us at the Paralympic movement.
Good to hear that, Andrew. Thanks for joining us on ATR, and let's get right to it. Yesterday, Tokyo 2020 organizers announced the schedule for sports competition for the Paralympic Games in 2021. 22 sports, 2 new para sports, badminton and taekwondo. I guess this is some positive news, a good step as we all face the uncertainty that you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. It's good news, of course, good news, because this is an evidence that, for example, we have guaranteed the venues and that we can move forward with the planning of the delivery of the sport competition, which is always the central part of any Paralympic Games. So good news overall. We are working with Tokyo 2020, with the IOC, of course, in how we can, at the moment, we are trying to understand what will be the games that are planning, what will be the games that we want, and it will be possible to organize next year if the COVID-19 pandemic is under control or is under certain control. So we are, as everybody knows, trying to simplify the games to, in some way, right-sizing or downsizing or reducing. But yes, what we want games, because even if you find a vaccine tomorrow, I don't think sport can be disconnected from the rest of the world. And we know that the economy of the world, it's being already hit really hard because of the pandemic. So the games next year, they need to reflect the games next year, and why not the needs from next year on? They need to reflect that we don't need any magnificence, we don't need any luxury. What we need is the athlete experience preserved, the spectator and the viewer experience preserved. Everything else we can reduce, we can live with it, because at the end of the day, what is fundamental? The performances of the athletes and the experience of the people watching, experiencing, buying tickets and being there at the venues. So this is what we need to preserve. So this is what we're doing at the moment together with the IOC, Tokyo 2020, the Japan national government, and with Tokyo Metropolitan Government.
Of course, Andrew, thanks for that. Good luck to all. Obviously, this has been a completely unexpected 4 months for international sport around the world. So many cancellations, obviously, of leagues and tournaments and events. The IPC, no different. You have 182 national Paralympic committees. Obviously, many in different situations, but there have been struggles, right? Both financially and, from a mindset, the entire perspective. How have you and the IPC tried to help the NPCs and obviously ultimately the para-athletes, both morally and financially?
Well, I think first of all, it's just sharing the information that we have available as we have it. So we're not hiding or keeping anything from our membership. We are giving all the information on Tokyo, information on classification, qualification process, because as you have mentioned, with the cancellation of so many sport events around the world, of course, the impact on our qualification process has been huge. We, in the Paralympic movement, and something that's unique to us is the classification. So how to offer classification opportunities to athletes when there is no competition taking place. So we are planning the scenarios, calming down and saying, look, no one will be, let's say, no one will have the chances to qualify to the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. Let's say reduced compared to any other athlete from a different country, because there's a lot of discussion about, oh, this country, that country, they have returned to train, we have not. So what we're trying to do is, first of all, guarantee that no one will benefit from that we will have a level playing field when it comes to the qualification and, of course, classification. But also, of course, we don't have the resources, let's say financial resources, to support financially our 182 national Paralympic committees, plus the international federations. They are also our members. So we have a 200 plus membership base. But what we're trying to do is engage with their governments, understand their situation, because this is a very unique crisis, because some of the most sophisticated national Paralympic committees with different revenue streams have been hit maybe harder than the ones who depend exclusively, for example, on their governments. But of course, when you go to some countries, like, I've been personally in contact with all of our membership. It's an ongoing exercise of dialogue with the different national Paralympic committees around the world. And sometimes you're dealing with a national Paralympic committee that tells you, look, I have a commercial deal here that is in jeopardy. And you speak with another one that says, look, we're trying to find food to our athletes. So we brought the athletes to the national stadium because here we have more control of the environment. Normally they live in very small houses of just one dorm, and they live 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 persons in the same room. So what we need to understand that, and understand who needs our help and how, when, and sometimes what can we do, what we cannot do. Is this something we leave with the government? Can we speak with the sponsor? So there's no one-size-fits-all approach here, because they're so different. But it's a unique crisis. Everyone is being hit really hard. The variety of ways that the NPCs have been hit, and the international federations, because we have some Olympic/Paralympic international federations who are facing challenges, but then we have the Paralympic specific international federations who are, let's say, not as sophisticated as the other ones, and sometimes they need more support even to let's say, to survive. So so it's information, it's collaboration, it's liaising with national governments. So it's a lot of work. It's keeping us really busy.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts. Andrew, a few weeks ago, you led the IPC governing board on its first ever virtual session in more than 30 years of IPC history, obviously necessary with the times that we're in. You're also a member of the Tokyo 2020 Coordination Commission, obviously representing the IPC. How was the presentation from Tokyo 2020? And obviously things we can't control, but what would you say the level of optimism is now as we all navigate this difficult situation?
Well, I think the level of optimism is high, as it can be. We are dealing with a very organized and reliable organizing committee, and national government and the metropolitan government. So we could not be in better hands in a situation like this. We have approved, or we have endorsed a planning that they have a roadmap in terms of the planning blocks that we have at the moment. So for example, now is exactly the moment, as I have said, that we are finding efficiencies. We are trying, this number is out there already, 200 of opportunities of saving costs have been already identified, and this will be an ongoing exercise until the closing ceremony of the Paralympic Games, which will be the last moment of the Games. We endorse some of the principles, like, for example, as I have said, it will be it'll be about sport. It'll be about preserving the athlete experience, the spectator, the viewer's experience. Everything else can be negotiated. Everything else can be downsized. All the other clients and all stakeholders of the games will be affected. And so we have agreed on how we are doing that, that this is the principle. Sometimes it sounds quite obvious. Oh, of course you have to do that, but we need these approvals, we need these principles to be endorsed, because once the principles are endorsed and we start to tackle the issues, then you have to negotiate. And if you have the principles really defined and endorsed by, let's say, IOC, IPC, the levels of government involved, then it's less difficult to negotiate. Let's put it that way. So I think it's a clear statement from the organizers, from the IOC and the IPC, about what are the priorities, where we are in the moment, and how we'll be organizing or delivering and planning the Tokyo 2020 Games. Many people ask me, so you have a deadline to decide on the games? And I said, no, we don't, because exactly we are following that roadmap. So we don't have, by X date, we will decide. We are not there yet. So we will be following that, because it's easier to try to put the cart in front of the horses here and say, look, on that date we'll make the decision. But we need a lot of steps before that to be able to even discuss and make the decision.
Yeah. So how closely is the IPC following the IOC? I mean, you guys are pretty much in the same boat. And when will serious or maybe they have discussions about potential countermeasures begin?
Well, exactly the roadmap. We had that in roadmap. So in the last quarter of this year is the moment when the countermeasures, specific COVID-19 countermeasures, will be discussed, or additional countermeasures as we are calling them. It depends, because of course, it's a moving target, and we know that there's a lot of research and studies and different ways of identifying the virus and different ways of protecting people from the virus and different ways. So at the moment, we are, let's say, focusing on planning the operational delivery of the games, of course, already with some countermeasures, and then in the last quarter of the year, we will, with the planning in some way approved and finalized. Of course, again, it's a moving target. We all know that. We will plan the additional countermeasures, because then we have operational readiness in the first quarter of 2021. And of course, first quarter leads us to March, and then we'll be very close to the opening ceremony of the games.
Yeah. Andrew, something I've been wondering about, and I had a discussion the other night with a longtime friend of mine, Chris Waddell, the fantastic Paralympic para-alpine skiing champion. He resides in Park City, Utah. Obviously, I want to get your opinion, your take. Do the Paralympics need to be in any way more cautious in staging a games during a Paralympics as opposed to the actual Olympics, whether it be because of different ailments of the disabilities, the immune systems of para-athletes? Is there anything different that needs to be considered, or is it more or less the same?
No, we don't have any research that shows that any Paralympic athlete, because of the disability, let's say, can contract the virus more easily or than let's say an able-bodied person. But of course, we know that the effect of the virus, then in some athletes, depending on the disability, normally spinal cord injuries, when you have when it affects the pulmonary capacity, for example, the lung capacity, it can affect. So it's not that they represent a higher risk of contracting the virus, but the effect on the virus once they get it. So yeah, we need to have some special measures depending on the level of disability and depending on the specific disability. If you think, for example, judo athletes in the context of the Paralympic Games, they are all blind and visually impaired. Of course, nothing different from any able-bodied athlete. But then you have boccia athletes who, yes, they have, if they contract the virus, the implications can be more severe. And then we have to protect them all. We need to provide an even safer environment for them to compete and live at the village, for example.
Yeah, so much to take into account. Of course, all the best for the health of our para-athletes and athletes moving forward. Andrew, I just wanted to jump back briefly to October of last year, a gala in Bonn, Germany, to celebrate 30 years of the International Paralympic Committee. You first got involved with the Brazilian Paralympic Committee back in 2001, became the president in 2009. Just tell me a little bit about the gala and how much progress, how much development have you seen in the Paralympic movement over these 3 decades?
Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot, and that was a good thing about the gala. We brought together, many people who were involved at the beginning, even before the International Paralympic Committee was founded. So involved in the, let's say, in the para movement, even before the foundation of the IPC. I think we have progressed a lot. If you think on for example, the delivery of the Paralympic Games, if you think on the Paralympic Games of 1988, 1992, and then Atlanta and Athens, and if you think on the last 3 editions of the Summer Games, and even in the Winter Games, if you think about Pyeongchang, Sochi, and Vancouver, amazing Winter Paralympics. Of course, we need to work on the numbers on the winter side. We're still there's room for growth, but on the summer, I think we have more and better athletes, not coming only from specific nations. Many of the national Paralympic committees now, they can stand on their own. The IPC has a solid financial situation, which was definitely not the case some 20 years ago. We have progressed a lot in our partnership with the IOC, which of course is something absolutely important because we share the best platform in the world, which is the whole city for the Olympics and the Paralympics. What we're trying to do now, and it goes back to our narrative, our change starts with sport, is try to go back where we started some 70 years ago when the founder of our movement, Sir Ludwig Guttmann, said something that still resonates really strong with us. My dream is every person with disability in the world can become a taxpayer. So meaning citizenship, meaning being able to work, to be productive, to be understood as a citizen, to be seen, perceived, valued as a citizen like anyone else. And I think we're not there yet. The 1 billion persons with disability around the world, they are still facing daily challenges that they should not be facing in the 21st century. And that's what we want to do with the Games. We want to offer or use this platform to really change things on the day-to-day of persons with disability. The game should be a catalyst for change, no doubt, but how we do that, and it's something that we are doing differently now. We understanding that in the last 20-something years, we needed to focus on our role as a sport organization and pure sport only, so that we could reach the level of relevance, if I may say, of maturity that now the movement has and the Games has. And so now we are ready to this next journey, which is going back to the beginning and really focusing on how the Games can help promote the human rights for persons with disability, how campaigns, how the athletes being advocates, how our interaction with international agencies and international bodies can help. For example, let's say, what will happen in Tokyo next year will have a positive effect on, let's say, in the life of a person with disability in El Salvador, for example. So how can we do that? How can we promote it? And how then can we measure that? I think, and that's the bottom line. How can we measure the impact of the Paralympic Games, not only on the host city and the host nation, but across the world? And that's the challenge for the next few years for us. How we can measure, prove that, and then even strengthen that effect.
Mm-hmm. Admirable, no doubt, all the change and development and obviously progress in the Paralympic movement. Andrew, during the recent IOC session, you were one of many members that thanked Thomas Bach for his work, his commitment, and obviously saying, he's the man to continue moving the flame forward, over these next 4 years. You also said that you feel that the relationship between the IOC and IPC with Mr. Bach as president is stronger than ever. I know you just touched upon this, but can you expand a little bit more about this ongoing relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's what I have invested in my 6 first months as president. There is no secret that the situation, let's say the relationship was not at its high when I was elected in September 2017 due to many different reasons. But, I think my first 6 months were focused on that, but not only in getting the agreement that finally was signed in March 2018, and it has strengthened and deepened our cooperation with the IOC. But it's to change the dynamics. Now, it need to be something that we like, they like, that it's good for both organizations and both movements, not only the organizations, not only IOC, APC, but how can then from here we can benefit, for example, or we can influence the cooperation between Olympic and Paralympic movement in the different nations around the world. But what I can say, since that we have signed that agreement, it has been a very cooperative relationship. We, of course, sometimes we are on different sides of the table and we need to negotiate, but I think this is being done with, let's say, with open minds, but also open hearts, and with dialogue. Say, look, this is good for you, this is good for me. That's, you know, where we can. So it's, and that's why I said what I said, because I think that Thomas has understood what not only what the Olympics can bring to the Paralympic movement, which is quite obvious. You know, it's the platform, resources, exposure, support. It's what the Paralympics can bring to the Olympic movement. And he really understands that. And it's not only Thomas, but I think when you have the leader of the organization saying that as loud and as clear as he had been saying, and we heard that from, for example, in our membership gathering in 2018 in Madrid, when Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr. was representing back there, and he said, you know, as clearly as possible, look, of course you think that you need us, but let me tell you one thing straight: we need you. We need the Paralympic movement. And I think that this philosophy of real partnership, and not only a business relationship. Of course, there is an aspect of business in it, but I think it's a true partnership, and that's why I praise Abar, because I think he really understood it. He, let's say, infused the IOC administration in Lausanne with that attitude. So when our staff meet with them on a day-to-day basis, the message is very clear. So that's why I think he's the right person to do the job for 4 more years.
Very nice to hear about this cooperation.
We are getting there. We are getting there.
Yeah. And I just love the part about the Olympic movement saying, you know, we need the Paralympics as well. Very touching. But I would assume, Andrew, and, you know, please clarify for me, that at the same time, the IPC wants its own voice. You want to continue to create your own identity and potentially handling other issues, other matters differently. For example, you know, the Russian situation with the doping crisis. You guys took a more hardline approach leading up to the 2016 Rio Games. Some things have changed now, heading toward Tokyo 2020. I guess, Andrew, first off, just tell me about, you know, being independent and having a different message of the IOC, and maybe just get us updated on the Russian situation for the Paralympics in Tokyo 21 now.
Well, I think this is another good aspect of our partnership, is that they understand that we need our autonomy, that we need our independence. But of course, we need dialogue. We need to understand where we can converge, or when we can do things together, and when we will have to take different approaches. And I think this is really clear. And the level of the partnership that we have now is one where, you know, we can sit around the same table and discuss that and say, look, we cannot do what you have done here. We need to take a different approach, and they can say the same. This is what partnership really means. You know, it's not only let's say, oh, the IOC needs to understand this, and that. Sometimes we need to understand this, and that, and the limits and the boundaries. So I think that's a very positive thing. I think, and they understand that sometimes we need to take different approaches here and there. On the Russian situation, then now we are kind of in the same situation as the IOC. The situation has gone to CAS. They will resume later this year the dealing of the case on the Russian situation. You know, we know the decision that has been taken by the WADA Executive Committee endorsing the position of the CRC, and that the Hosada has appealed has not agreed with it, and then the case went to CAS. So now we are in the same boat. As you have said, we have to wait for CAS decision, and we are an interest party in that, the APC, as well as the IOC, because what we need clarity. And sometimes we don't want that the decision taken by CAS, whatever the decision is, leaves room for interpretation. We need to understand that a lot, as you know, there's a lot of details, and we and we want to know that the decisions are absolutely clear. So we don't need to interpret, we will then implement whatever CAS decides.
We're talking today with International Paralympic Committee President Andrew Parsons. Andrew, just a few more questions here on this, Tuesday morning for you. Regarding sponsors, obviously the IOC has flourished over the years with such top-notch top sponsors. What's the current situation with your top sponsors, and also a little bit about Airbnb coming on board as they did with the IOC? What's the communication, the dialogue with your sponsors, again, during these challenging financial times?
Well, I think first of all, that's one of the positive aspects of the agreement we have with the IOC. It was supposed to kick in from 2021 on. The fact that any top sponsor will automatically become a partner of the IPC and of the Paralympic Movement and of the Paralympic Games. But even before 2021, some of in some cases in renewals or in new partnerships, this element is already there. So Airbnb is a very good example. But for example, when the visa contract was renewed, was extended, and then it was automatically extended as well in the Paralympic side. It's interesting because with visa, we used to have a situation where our contract was independent of the IOC contract. So it was different, then it had a different cycle, if I put it that way. And now it's the same cycle, and now we have streamlined, and which is good, because I think in the past it used to be the case that IOC announces a top sponsor, then we go to the same company and say, look, what do you think about the IPC, the Paralympic Movement? And in some cases, the communication is not clear. In some cases, they say, oh, we thought you were already included or not, and so on. So now the rule is absolutely clear to everyone involved, and it helps us a lot, like with the Airbnb and this festival now, for example, during tough times, this online festival with athletes, with Paralympic athletes as well as Olympic athletes. We have been having conversations with Airbnb and all of our sponsors, even the sponsors that they say they are not top sponsors, because we still have some of them. And what surprised me, because we were of course ready to renegotiate, let's say, the contracts, and we understand that most of our contracts, if not all of them, they target the games. We understand that. But the first reaction of many of our partners was, what else can we do to support you? What else can we do to support your members and your athletes? And that was really touchy. There was I will not mention the companies and so, but there was this call and I think it was still March or April, and when of course we came defending, look, the situation difficult, cash flow and this and that. And they said, look, this call is not to discuss that. This call is to discuss how can we better support you and your athletes. What can we do for you? What can we do for your athletes? Because some of our commercial partners, they are also partners of some national Paralympic committees. So we are taking care of those. What else can we do? So, and this was done in a way that really, and you think, well, this is true partnership. This is not only a business transaction. This is true partnership. And I almost cried during the call, but I recomposed it. So, but I think to have that kind of understanding and our partnership really means a lot for the Paralympic movement, as we have touched upon a few minutes ago. If you think where we were 15 years ago, that will not be the case. So to see how we have grown and how the partners understand what we're doing here with using sport as a tool, it's really great to see.
Yeah. Good to hear. Have to take care of those corporate partners, of course, and hopefully they get the value and the exposure and the positive publicity, obviously, that you want them to have. Final question today, Andrew. It seemed to me, at least, that London 2012 was a big turning point from the Paralympic movement. It kind of seemed like those Paralympics were, the most TV coverage, the most digital coverage, the most exposure, the biggest ratings that the Paralympics ever received. Obviously, we're in a tough situation now with COVID-19, but hopefully looking beyond COVID-19, how do we build on what was, not entirely created in London 2012, but, definitely got a revamp and move positively into the future for the Paralympic movement?
Well, I think we need to. Yeah, London was a turning point, no doubt about it. But I think it was also part of of a pathway of an evolution. We all know the challenges we had in Rio, for example. But I think it turned out that Rio was as important for the movement as London because I think we were never so exposed or raw, if I put it that way. It was pure sport. It was pure sport. But London, how can we? I think London brought different ways of experiencing the Paralympic movement. What Channel 4, for example, has done with the communication and the way and the approach, have opened some different possibilities to us. And London embarking on that and putting both games in the same level when it comes to the promotion. So we have been trying. So it created a new benchmark, no doubt. So whenever an organizing committee says, "Look, how we should promote the Paralympic Games," of course, London is the benchmark. So look, do what London did here, but of course improve. Now we have different channels. Social media is even bigger than it was at the time. So I think we will always owe London something because what they did with the games was incredible. It's the birthplace of the Paralympic movement, in the 40s, in the 1940s, and so it's kind of our spiritual heart. So it was like a rebirth for the Paralympic movement. I may say, I think Beijing was great, was fantastic. They promised games of equal splendor was the line at the time, and they did it. But I think what London did was not just repeat what was done to the Olympics in the same in a smaller scale, or sometimes in a very similar level as it was Beijing, but to think in the specificities of the Paralympic movement. How can we do this differently? And think about the Paralympic. How can we promote it? How can these athletes become household names in their own countries if we do something differently? And I think that's what we have been trying to do since then. So, and you see that in for example in Tokyo, that they have the same understanding. Look, we don't want to do the same copy paste in a smaller scale. We want to do something tailor made to the Paralympics, because I know even though these movements they cooperate a lot, they do a lot of things together. They are separate movements. They have different names, different targets. They want to achieve different things.
Andrew, I lied. One last question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Maybe the most challenging question you may have today. I'm confident that you'll probably be able to handle it. Of all the para sports, which one impresses you the most?
It's impossible to say that, because in every single sport you have, for example, if I'm always impressed with alpine, for example, when you have blind skiers downhill 100 kilometers per hour, trusting in a guy that is skiing in front of him, communicating with a radio system. But then you go to blind football, which is absolutely incredible. How can the level of skill, it's a team sport. So how they pass the ball to each other, how they organize themselves in a field of play. And then you have boccia, athletes with such a severe disability, motor disability, and it's a sport of precision. Yeah. So it's impossible. I'm naming three and I'm already feeling the pain. And of course, you have the big sports such as athletics, swimming, where you have all the disabilities represented. So I love each of the 28 sports, 6 in the winter and 22 in the summer. And outside the Paralympic movement, in the Paralympic Games, we have some other incredible sports as well. Yeah. So it's yes, you were right. It was the most difficult question this morning.
Andrew, I hope you will not be filled with emails from the 27 other sports after they see this. So best of luck with that.
I'm sure that we need to balance things, and I'm sure I will receive an email after they see this interview.
Yeah. Andrew, thanks so much for your time. All the best as you continue to navigate the journey toward Tokyo 2020, now 21. Obviously, all the best to your federations, to your Paralympic committees, and first and foremost, look forward to seeing your para athletes hopefully 1 year from now in Tokyo.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and yes, in no way we are underestimating the challenge that is ahead of us, but we always keep this optimistic attitude. We don't know to do it any other way, and hopefully we will see Paralympic athletes in Tokyo next year just inspiring the world.
All right. And thanks to you for joining us on another edition of ATRadio. I'm Brian Pinelli. Remember, AroundTheRings.com, for more than 25 years, your #1 source of news and information about the Olympic and Paralympic movement. Have a great day, everybody.